Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Reacher Season 2, Episode 4. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode. Our squad is looking through all of this new age data, and they're not really finding too much, but ultimately they start piecing stuff together because of some exchanges between Swan and Marlo Burns. They were able to kind of see, like, okay, there's a coded message here. There's something about Hendrix, but he doesn't like Hendrix, so they were using it as code for a particular project that New Age is a part of. It's a defense contract called Little. What was it called? Little Bird. What was it called again? I'm actually blanking on it. But either way, this whole thing tied into the whole conversation of, is Swan dirty? And Reacher's the only one that doesn't even want to entertain the idea, which even O'Donnell throws it in his face. Aren't you being a little hypocritical? Assumptions kill. But I did love that. Who would be the person to call him out? It would be Neely. They have a very interesting relationship because she is the one person who could. I mean, a lot of them would call him out, but I think Neely's the only person he would listen to amongst them. Like they do. Like she even said last episode or episode before last about how their relationship is. That was episode 3 where she was talking about, yeah, not talked for like years, but I know he's there for me. But she was suggesting, like, right, you don't want to even entertain the possibility that Swan might be a bad guy because you brought him in. And if you brought him in, that makes you responsible for our friends that he potentially might be responsible for their deaths. Like, but she's like, that's a stupid way of thinking. But I think there obviously Reacher holds a lot of guilt about a lot of stuff. Like I said, he doesn't really talk about it, but it is an angle of, I also haven't been in contact with you guys for so long that you guys are so different. I mean, him and O'Donnell have that whole thing later on where it's like, yeah, he's got 2 boys and he's there with them and the PTA meetings and yada yada, the normal life, and having to schedule sex with his wife. But it's like, yeah, I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world, because it's like, wow, you really have changed. Like, a lot can change while they're gone. So it's there in the back of Reacher's mind that maybe there's a possibility, but he doesn't want to believe that. He doesn't want to even entertain the idea, but he recognizes that, yes, assumptions do kill, and you can't deny any and all possibilities when you're still in the dark about a lot of this. So I think Neely gave him a lot to, like, ponder on with that whole situation. But that's still rattling off in the back of his mind, because that conversation in particular got predicated by a memory he had of the bust he had. So once again, this has to tie into that case in maybe it's a little indicative on a more character basis of where they were then versus where they are now, because it seems like that was probably the last thing that they worked on, potentially, because Neely says at the time this would have been Reacher's like 151st case closed, and we know that based on Finley saying last season, that is, I think him and Roscoe were talking about his record, that was part of it. So that's probably one of the last things they did as the 110th. Maybe there were other cases they worked on, but I don't see them as being the type to walk away from something unfinished. So I would assume that was their final case, but who knows? Maybe things went sideways, because we don't know how the 110th ended. We know just like, right, they're no longer in the army, but was it like they got disbanded and eventually Reacher left the army? Was it a combination of the two? Like, what ended up happening? What was the end of the special investigators? I think that in particular is probably going to play a key role for Reacher and his reactions and how he's feeling about all this, is how that ending predicated so much and led to, hey, I'm not saying it's the exact reason, but just the way things ended, these people he hasn't seen in so many years and for so much time to pass that, quite a few of them are dead. Once again, Laurie died in like a car accident or something 2 years ago, but still, it's like just so much time passed that, once again, after his experience in Margraves, you would think that would have inspired him to talk about it, but he hasn't. In fact, actually love that it actually comes up. He casually drops the fact is because it's like, oh yeah, later on we could go see go to Homeland Security about something, and it's like, oh, they're really going to see it. It's like, yeah, Joe does have some connections. Well, we know at least one person he was really tight with. It's obviously, Molly Beth, who sadly died last season, but it's like, but I mean, there were probably other people on the team that you could probably reach out to, and he was probably had a good enough connect with other lanes of Homeland Security, not just the unit or like particular group and team he was leading. But yeah, just Reacher just casually drops. Yeah, Joe's dead, and then O'Donnell and Dixon are looking at him, and they don't push. Because the next scene, that conversation doesn't continue. But Reacher's like, yeah, so let's go eat. But you see, if you look at, I was about to say O'Neilly. If you look at Neely in the back, she just kind of like sighs and kind of turns her head. Because she was like, I had brought it up previously. She knows what went down in Margrave. So when Reacher doesn't talk about it in like episode 2 about what he's been up to, Neely, like, once again, she respects that. She's not the one that's like, oh, I'm gonna push. It's like, you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to talk about it. That's your business. I'll talk about it when you openly talk about it, but until then, I'm not gonna add anything. She didn't say anything in that scene. She didn't go, oh, you're gonna give them context on how Joe died, that he was murdered, and you solved that last season. No, we're not even gonna touch that. And then, once again, I think it speaks volumes about Reacher that he hasn't told them. That it's like, yeah, here's someone you care about, because it enters that thing of like, wow, we're supposed to be a team. So much time has passed, and it just speaks volumes about Reacher's lack of talking about stuff. He just keeps a lot of stuff bottled up, and it's just like, even where him and Dixon, like, because Dixon opened up about like, oh, her relationship and stuff like that. So they've all gotten vulnerable about life. He's the one that kind of still plays a lot of his cards close to his vest, especially something as important as, yeah, my brother died. Not only did my brother die, my brother was murdered. So that's something that speaks on so many levels that he doesn't talk about that. So, but like I said, it also speaks to the rest of the team not pushing him on it. Though I could definitely see Dixon really angling for that a little bit more later, or not really pushing, but just being like, so were you ever going to mention anything about Joe dying? Like, I'm curious. It feels like that's a plot thread that will kind of get tugged on a little bit later on. They're going to probably put what it might be next episode, might be in a couple episodes, but it feels like that's a story beat thread that they're going to pull on. They're just going to let it simmer for a little bit, because like I said, that moment, no one in the car says anything. They just kind of like, Dixon and O'Donnell were shocked, but didn't push him on it. But I think that it probably won't be O'Donnell, but it probably will be Dixon who pulls that thread a little. So I should also really include this fun little fact. I completely forgot Serinda Swan was in Smallville. It just clicked in I was watching something today, well, technically yesterday at the time of recording this, that had said that, had reminded me that she was in it, because she played Zatanna, and I completely forgot about that. To my recollection, she's only in 2 episodes. The character, like, is involved in 3 episodes. There's a 3rd episode she never pops up in, that she's responsible for some stuff, I think, in the final season, but that's a whole tangent. But yeah, like, I completely forgot she was also on Smallville. Either way, I just kind of want to include that situation, because that just like popped up in my head after seeing something today. But either way, going back into the crux of the story, O'Donnell has like a connection that can lead them to this. And he part of the Senate. He's like, I think he was a senator. Was it Lavoie or something like that? He has a aide named Boyd who, or an assistant aide or something like that, who could be their in, because getting to the senator is not going to be easy, but getting to his like assistant or aide, like, that'll be easy. So they set up this whole situation. They get all dressed up because he's going to this particular musical that's happening, or symphony that's happening, and they go and they all get dressed up, which is actually pretty dope. You get to see Neely dressed up, which even O'Donnell's like, holy shit, like, you look great. And then Dixon looks great as well. So it's just like, wow, the gentlemen look handsome, but come on, the ladies really like both like really, really shine. It's like, holy, it's like, yeah, those are some very, very beautiful women. It's already pretty obvious, but even more so when you just like, it just blows you away. I do love the whole setup situation of, her showing up at the symphony and kind of convincing him, like, oh, like, he wants to sit next to you because, like, once again, it's very, even Reacher himself says it, like, yeah, look at him, like, look at Dixon, like, this boy dude had no shot, like no chance. Like, of course you're going to fall to her charms and get sucked into this whole situation. But the moment Reacher was talking about calling in a buddy to help, and I love O'Donnell's like, oh, can you really trust this person? He's like, oh yeah, like if he was because he if he was in the army, I would have made him a part of the 110th. Which I'm like, the moment he said it, I was like, is it who I think it is? And it turns out, yes, it is. It's Finley, which I was like, I love that. I was like, that's awesome. It's so interesting, too, because he would never admit that to Finley. I mean, they're in a better place relationship-wise after everything, sure. Like, I mean, they're that complicated friendship. Yeah, they're in a, but I don't think he would ever admit that to Finley. Like, that'd be giving him, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to give him the ego boost. But yeah, Finley showing up, which I brought up, I literally lost my shit because I'm like, come on, dude. It's like they don't interact, but him and Miranda Swan being in the same scene, I'm like, come on, dude. Just slip Jimmy Simpson and Laz Alonso into this show in some shape or form, and then you just have like, I mean, you won't have like the full set like Breakout Kings reunion, but come on, 3 of them are in this episode. They're not in all of this together, but still, it's so, I don't know. I got too giddy about it. I mean, for one, it's just nice to have Finley back, but also just like Serena Swan and Malcolm Goodwin just being in the same scene. Like I said, it's just like my nerd brain just like explodes because I just think that's so dope. But Finley playing his role, I love it. They're setting Boyd up, and here comes Reacher coming in as Special Agent Jack Margraves, and then the smile on Finley's face. I'm like, yes! I was like, I love it. But I love him and O'Donnell playing, the FBI agent roles, and they're like, right, they're trying to screw Boyd over, because it's like, cool, we can have it plastered all over the paper. How will this make your boss feel? So we find out what this operation is all about. It's about anti-missile. That's what it's some tech that's related to anti-missile stuff, so it can make it so that aircrafts can be avoided, like during it's meant to protect aircrafts against missiles, but if it's utilized in a grounded missile situation, you can make it so that, yes, it will go past the target, and the person that you're trying to target who's in an aircraft, they'll think, oh, good, we're safe. It'll turn around and almost like heat seeking, but like more directed to like make you feel like you're safe and let your guard down. So, but there's no avoiding it. It will, the way he's kind of making it sound like there's no escape in the air. Even if you manage to avoid it the second time, like it will constantly come after you. It feels like that's kind of what he was implying. But it's like, yeah, it's death from above is kind of how he described it. So he's thinking everything's fine. And like, right, our country's got this technology. We cut through some red tape and all that. We're evolved with new age. So it's like, right, we had to cut through some red tape, kind of handle things in a very skeevy way just to make this happen, but it's for the greater sake of this nation. It's like, well, the problem is AM is involved with New Age, and he's a weapons dealer, and so him having access to this technology is not a good thing, because Reacher did finally get the numbers. He figured out the numbers related to what Franz had on his computer, and it turns out, once again, 13 out of 14 or 11 out of 13, he added those up, and basically when it all comes out, it's like there's a 650 difference, so that's where the 650 at 100K comes from. So it's like, what is that about? It's like, okay, so whatever it was happened 13 out of 14 times. We were hoping it would have, so there's still like a discrepancy of like 650 and whatever that is. So I'm like, is that about the missiles at 100K each? Is that what that's about? Because I did at the time say, like, maybe it's about something tech related. Like, so it is. It seems I might have guessed right on that part, but maybe that's what it is. Maybe 650 of the chips. But I was about to say, like, is that where the 100K comes in? That each one's like 100K. I don't know, because I'm like, where like, because it sounds like those are probably trials of like maybe like 13 out of 14 times did the device work. So, but then could you have that thing of like, right, whatever it was happens less and less the further you go down the pages over the course of those 7 months. So like, maybe that's supposed to be survivors of it. So maybe the less numbers in the later pages means like, okay, it's more successful each time. Maybe that's what that's supposed to mean. Still not like the 650 at 100K. We kind of figured that out, but we still don't fully have the context of, and we add this operation and this tech, but it's still not clear what those numbers fully represent. I'm not quite piecing it together, like how that correlates to this tech in that capacity, like the numbers of like 13 out of 14 times. Like I get the totals and subtracting it to get the 650, but I don't quite compute how those numbers, like what they correlate to when it comes to this whole conversation. You also had the Marlo Burns situation. What was interesting because Neely and Dixon went to her place. When they went there, I was like, she's most likely dead. I was like, would they have had time to kill her? Because I was like, there's no way they would have killed her. She wouldn't even be a loose end if she took care of Reacher. I was like, not unless they found out. Oh, because I was like, I don't know if Home Dude contacted him, the guy that died of a heart attack last episode, who's part of like the security squad or like, he is an employee at New Age. He is connected to all this, but I don't think he would have had time to report to them. Maybe he did. When it was all said and done, it was a little while before Reacher went after him, so maybe he did report to them at the time. That because yeah, they do come after them later on, so I guess maybe she ran because she immediately heard like, oh crap, they failed to kill Reacher. I'm screwed because that means Reacher and his team are going to come after me. And the last thing I want to deal with is because I know if they are still alive, I'm going to get killed because I'm a loose end. Because she also has a child too, so there is an angle to that. So, but my thought was like, I guess there's enough time and wiggle room for it to be a thing of they could have been killed. That's kind of what I was expecting Dixon. Well, I didn't know her having a kid at the time, but I was like, oh, they're most likely going to walk in and she's dead. But no, she's still alive. She managed to get out of there with her child in time. But what was interesting, though, like, obviously did not pack everything, left her jewelry behind. Also, the money she gotten paid. I'm like, that is interesting. You would think if you're going on a run, you would take that money. So, like, why would you leave it? Even if you managed to take some of it, like, you would have taken all of it. So I'm like, is it something? Well, we are dealing with, like, maybe this is government related, so maybe it is a situation where they can track that money. Maybe, not unless those bills are counterfeit or something like that. I mean, they did a counterfeiting storyline last season, so I don't know if they double back on that with this. I doubt that's, but it is suspicious that you wouldn't take any of that money. I mean, because sure, you could take some of it, but it's like, no, you would have taken all of the money. Why take some of it when you could take all of it? So that's something like that is kind of a loose end thread. That was also kind of neat too. Just little fun, interesting things like when you pause and look at what games the daughter has, because even Neely's like, oh, she's got good taste. There was a particular game I recognized, but I can't remember it. I know she has the Insane Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy and Crash Bandicoot 4 About Time. She also had like Legend of Zelda. There were some others I'd recognize too, because some of them were like upside down or backwards. But I thought that was just kind of neat little details. I was like, oh, I wonder why specifically those games. Maybe some of that will be relevant, especially because Neely went out of her way to be like, oh, she's got good taste. So might be something that might be necessary and might help with the whole tracking Burns and her daughter down. So we'll see how that whole situation ultimately ends up playing out. I brought him up earlier, AM. We do catch up with him. He does end up killing that doctor who's like, he's so passionate too. Be like, oh, do we really have to ruin your face? You're a handsome guy. But I mean, not ruin your face, but if you want to change your face, and then he kills the guy because, well, right, stealing your identity. And also, he's like, yeah, I got to have a word with your assistant too. After he's like, and it's like psychotic too, where he's just like, oh, here you are, you're a doctor, you know what's happening to you, and you're dead. And then ends up killing, the assistant behind the desk too, which is sad, but knew that was going to be the case. But yeah, got to take the guy's identity. He's heading to Denver because that's where, what was it? The software is made in New York. The hardware is made in Colorado. It might have been vice versa. That's why he's there. So that's where Dixon and Neagley are supposed to head next. Also, the whole comic book thing, like, what's up with that thread? Where he's just like giving away these comic books. I'm like, that's so weird. And he's like, oh, like, cause he's like, oh, he brought it up before when he'd given one away of why he likes it. I actually don't remember, but he was in a process of giving a speech again, but they cut it because it's like, right, you already heard it before, but I don't remember what his answer was. But it was like, why? What's up with the comic book thing? Maybe that'll turn into a bigger plot point. I don't know. That just seems so weird. And it seems like a very specific comic book too. Then I'm like, I don't know if that's something they made specifically. I would assume that's something like the way they're just like showing it off. It has to be something they made specifically for the show. It probably isn't a real existing comic book, but maybe it is, and I'm just wrong. Finally, we had this situation at the end of the episode where a biker gang shows up because it's like, wow, you were really going for whoever you can get. Like, at least it seemed like you had some trained professionals before. I mean, I guess it's like, hey, like, you get some like hired help. Like, it's probably cheap on a cheaper side of things. But yeah, they didn't even have their guns because obviously guns would have drawn too much attention. So took their guns, but it ends up in a whole brawl, and your squad gets messed up. It's like, once again, Reacher breaking bones is just kind of like, ugh, especially when he breaks people's legs. Like the last dude, he had like a bar or something, and then he used it to like twist and break the guy's leg, and it's just like, and then like smacked him in the face with it. I don't know if he's dead or, because some of them were knocked out, some of them are straight up dead. One guy took a heel to the face, and his eye got punctured and everything. You're just like, ugh. So yeah, that got their asses handed to them. So. And Reacher ends up talking to Langston, and he's like, right, I'll give you whatever you want to, when it comes to all of this, so tell me what's your price. And he's like, what I want is to throw you out a helicopter. Because for Reacher, it's like, no. What I want is revenge. I want payback for what you did to my friend. So I'm going to throw you out a helicopter, which I'm like, that means Reacher has to do that. There's probably a good possibility Langston will die before Reacher gets that opportunity. It would be so juicy and poetic if he gets that opportunity, but it's like, because it's like the KJ of it all last season. It's like, he got what was his, but you're also like, yeah, he got shot. No, did he get shot at all? No, he got beaten up and caught on fire and burned alive, but it still just felt like, it wasn't enough. Same thing for Dawson. Dawson, like, got shot, just didn't feel like. And then he died. Isn't that how Reacher killed him last season? But it's like, it's just, the comeuppance isn't just enough. You're just like, oh, I want them to suffer more because they're pieces of shit. But it's like, so I get the feeling like it probably will be very satisfying if it happens, but it's most likely like, no, Langston is going to die before then. Reacher probably won't get an opportunity. So we'll see how it all shakes out. Some last minute things I forgot to cover that I want to also include, but Reacher and Finley's conversation. It's like, right, finding out that he not only picked up the badge again, he's also a lieutenant. It's like, Jack is still okay, eats too much like his namesake. Still wearing the tweed suits, and he also kept the ring on. He's like, yeah, I still he's like, are you, well, first he was like, Reacher, did you kill anyone? He's like, yeah, here and there. He's like, are you still spinning that ring? He's like, here and there, but better each day, which is good. And also him being like, Neely, almost didn't recognize you, looking good. She's like, all right, shut up with your like elbow patches for his tweet. And it's like, yeah, like, if you need any help, I'm here. But it's like, no, you've helped enough. It's like, see you around, Richard, see you around, Finley. And it's like, maybe this will be the only time we get our Finley cameo. This might be the only one, but maybe they might sneak in some more. I'd assume this season's going to be 8 episodes like the last season, so we still got half the season to go. So obviously he's close enough in the general area for you to kind of call in some favors and stuff, so he could pop in to help out every once in a while type of situation. So it'd be interesting to see if we get to see any more of Finland. I'd obviously be very open to it, but it feels like that could easily just be a one and done thing, but we'll see. But finally, the other bit, I wanted to talk about it this time because I didn't talk about it in episode 2 or whatever, when he robbed those drug dealers of their guns and tossed their drugs because they needed drugs to get the Boyd, and so it goes to the same spot. And I love that O'Donnell tried to go over, but it's like, well, if they saw Reacher, they would have definitely ran anyway, but they saw O'Donnell and they immediately thought he was a cop, which is funny considering that's why not Neely. I don't know why I keep doing that. Neely and Reacher had to go into that bar in episode 2, I think it was, because they would have they would have been made as cops. So for that to kind of have that same implication here, but Reacher knocks the second guy down, ends up taking his gun. Obviously, they end up just tossing because they don't need it, and also ended up taking his drugs. And it's just like, man, it's been a rough week for you, guy. Find some new employment, you know? So just thought that was kind of like a fun bit, just kind of bringing that back again in that capacity. Like I said, I didn't talk about it last time, so I want to make sure I talk about it this time. Oh yeah, I'd actually completely forgot about. We had the whole situation with Russo getting chewed out by his boss by this situation, because it's like, yeah, he's aware of the special investigators and how Russo's supposed to be able to rein them in, but he didn't. And I love that his boss is yelling at him. He's like, yo, can you lower your voice? And he's like, you want me to lower my voice in my own fucking office? And he's just like, okay, can you please go talk to them and find out what they know? Could you at least do that much? And it's like, poor Russo got reamed by him, but also they got Russo to start looking into some of the other new age employees, and it's like, well, is that my job in the team, just to kind of be your official like person to look through this database? And it's like, yeah, that's your role. He's like, if it wasn't for me needing you anymore, I definitely would have kept screening your calls the entire time. I love that. So some very, very interesting developments. I'm curious to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.